Alberta and Ontario are joining forces to push for new railways and pipelines. Today, Premiers Danielle Smith and Doug Ford signed two memoranda of understanding in Calgary. One of those documents focuses on new pathways for resources, saying they'll work together on the development of rail infrastructure to support the subsequent phases of the Ring of Fire, where Ontario hopes to mine critical minerals, and on joint development of commercial options for building new oil and gas pipelines. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Mark Carney gave another boost to a potential pipeline today, telling the Calgary Herald that it's highly likely an oil pipeline will make Ottawa's major projects list.
Hey everyone. So before we continue, I want to break that down a little bit. So thus far, Ontario and Alberta have come to an agreement to make sure that whatever's got to be done, we'll do to make sure we can get our resources essentially cross-country. And it also says that Mark Carney is in favor of a pipeline going through the country. So let's keep going. I'll show you a bit more and we'll break it down.
I want to get into the deal you signed with Ontario today, or the Memorandum of Understanding with Ontario. But I want to get your reaction to what the Prime Minister said over the weekend when he was stopped by a reporter or a columnist with the Calgary Herald, and he said it's highly likely a pipeline will make Ottawa's list of projects for fast tracking. How do you respond to that statement? How do you interpret that statement?
I'm very encouraged by that. I mean, one of the issues that we have found in talking with the pipeline companies is that almost every one of them agrees that the best project for us, the highest value, easiest to build, that opens up the new markets in Asia would be a pipeline, a bitumen pipeline to the Northwest BC coast. And so we've been advocating that from the very beginning. We know that there's an opportunity as well with the Pathways project to be looking at how we might have a more decarbonized product going through. And so those two projects together, I think the Prime Minister seems to have some interest in. They have to do a little bit more work because putting something on a project list is, of course, a necessary condition to getting it done, but it's not sufficient. If we want anything to be built, to be drilled to go into that pipeline, we need to change the overall investment climate. So we have a lot more work to do on that front.
Right. So to get on the list, though, it needs a proponent. And the Prime Minister is also quoted in this Calgary Herald piece as saying the private sector is going to drive it. You're talking to the companies, I get that, but is there a proponent? Is there someone getting ready now to come with a proposal to the federal government, to the new major projects office, say, this is our plan, this is who we are, this is our money, let's go?
Well, I can tell you that we hear from the pipeline companies that as long as there is a greenwashing bill that makes it criminal behavior to talk about their emissions reductions, as long as there's a tanker ban, and as long as there's a production cap, which is they say it's an emissions cap, but we know it's a cap on production, that there's not a lot of enthusiasm for a private sector company to come forward and waste a lot of money going through the process if it's not going to result in more production. So that's why I said we need to address those bad laws.
So I wanted to show that full response because it leads up to the end of her response, where she talks about how supposedly it's illegal for these companies and corporations to talk about their efforts in reducing emissions, which isn't true. It's illegal to lie about it. That's where she gets you. As well, I'm sure you've heard it before, and I'm going to point it out again. There is a emissions cap. There is not a production cap. As much as she wants to sit there and say, oh, well, it really is a, cap on production. No. Later on in this interview or this conversation, she talks about we can only go as fast as our innovation. She's right. We can only go as fast as our innovation. And she continues to talk about the companies and corporations and their interests. Why don't we see innovation? Because these same companies and corporations that she's talking to refuse to put money to invest in innovation to cut down emissions so they can produce more. All while, let's be clear, Canada is pumping out record amounts of oil, okay? There hasn't been a restriction on what can be pumped out. There's record amounts of oil coming out of the ground in Canada as we speak. So at this point, no production has been halted. It's actually geared up more and somehow there's an issue. So, with all that being said, as well, yeah, sure, Mark Carney on the federal level has said he would be down for a pipeline. And now I need to ask conservative voters, what's your problem with Mark Carney? You want a pipeline? He's saying it's going to happen. Like, I don't understand how the conservative liberals are pissing off conservative voters when they're literally getting everything they want. However, let me point one thing out. As we see across Canada, both on provincial levels from multiple provinces, including Alberta and Ontario, as well on the federal level, where they're essentially putting through legislation that makes it so they can bypass the duty to consult, which means they don't give a damn about what people affected by this stuff is going to happen. When you have First Nations standing up across the country against these legislations, both on provincial and federal level, as well as coming out and saying, we do not support this going through our land, it's not going to happen. The people are telling you what's going to happen. And it's not going to be in the favor of these politicians. The more you know, guys. Till next time.